So next up, we have Cauldron Energy Limited with the ticker code CXU. Cauldron is an exploration and development company with a focus on an energy transition, including its focus on uranium. And for those of you who don't follow Jono on Twitter or LinkedIn, I would encourage you to. So to tell you more, we've got the CEO, Jonathan Fisher.
Team, look, thank you. And I would encourage anyone to give me a follow on X or on LinkedIn. My X is handle is CXU ASX. Very, very active in campaigning for change in uranium state policy, especially in WA, but also getting involved in a bit of the nuclear energy debate we're having federally as well. The photo here we've got is a photo from our current drilling campaign. So we are undertaking the largest uranium drilling campaign in WA. Sorry. Since the ban in 2017. And you'll see that I do a little bit of humour on my slides. Great way to get engagement. And this cartoon just sums up the experience in Germany and other places where we are seeing nuclear power being coming back to the fore and realising there's an integral part of the energy transition. I won't go too much into the stuff that Guy has already covered on the market, but in other stuff, politically, I think over the weekend we saw the news poll for the first time come out, 51-49 Liberal ahead. A little bit to go, obviously, but very interesting news. You've had the Labor government thrown out in the territory. Queensland will be next. Be very interesting to see how WA in the federal election cycle goes. We've just made a big new discovery at Manyingee, which I'll talk to you about in a sec. That's the focus of my presentation. And we've also just raised some money. So we raised $4 million a couple of weeks ago. So well funded to sort of go into next year's drill campaign as well. Okay, can you see the Manyingee hole? This was hole 48 for us, our discovery hole at Manyingee. I did a bit of video about this last week. But you can see the mineralized horizons. There are actually three of them in this hole. Sort of an A, B, and C roll front, kind of similar to the Manyingee deposit. And I'm going to go into that in a second. Actually, we'll go into that now. So we are 4.5 kilometers away from Paladin's big Manyingee asset and so we're at what we call Manyingee South, although it's kind of west. We call it Manyingee South. So over on the right here, and I hope you can see my screen, maybe, we have the deposit of Paladin's Manyingee asset. And what those yellow sort of parts in the deposit show are the high-grade zones. So what we see, the highest grade zones in Manyingee are actually along the western edge of the paleo channel, and then sort of around the dogleg, we call it, up the top there. So when we look then over to the left here, which is our drilling, there are two things. We haven't actually found the western side of our paleo channel yet. It's still open. So we don't think we've hit the best grade. And we are only now just starting to drill test sort of what we call up and around the dogleg. I hope to have these first holes here and here reported to the market in the next few days, and should they come in, you will see reported strike length at Manyingee go from like 3 kilometers to 6 kilometers. So, what's happening here and whether it is analogous to what happens at Manyingee at Paladin's assets, really exciting time for us. And look, I just encourage everyone to keep an eye out for the next announcement on that. We now go into the regional play, and what we describe regionally for Cauldron is that we have 80 kilometres of ancient shoreline that runs sort of on the west of our tenements. We have a source of uranium, which is uraniferous granite highlands over to the east. And essentially, look what happens. It used to rain. The water would wash down from the granitic highlands, down ancient river systems and into the sea. The uranium would go down those ancient river systems in our paleo channels. And generally, the uranium is deposited at the river mouth, so where the river meets the sea. And that's why it's important to have the ancient coastline in our tenements. That's why we've got more coastline than anyone else. So we see now, we've got, we do this sort of example of the palm of the hand with the fingers. Well, we've now got sort of 10 to 15 paleo channels identified, all coming from that same uraniferous source of granite. We've tested only 2 of them fully, which is our existing Bennet Well and now Manyingee South. We've got a lot more uranium there to find along those other paleo channels. We have put some exploratory holes just initially down into some of the other paleo channels down the south, and in fact, there've been historical hits there. So we think this is truly a prolific region for ISR uranium. And, I'll go back to what Shannon was saying. Look, grade is king, except if it's ISR, because in ISR, at 400 or 500 parts per million, I can be cheaper to build and cheaper to operate than a, 200,000 parts per million project in Canada because of the nature of the recovery of ISR. So ISR grades look on the face of it lower, but you stack them up in a cost curve, and that'll be down the bottom end, and it'll also be cheaper to build. Just a couple of words. This is going into where we are in federal debate. Australia is a nuclear country. Labor and the Greens don't want to admit it. We have activity in almost every sector of the nuclear value chain, except nuclear weapons. We don't want them. That civilian nuclear generation piece is a really interesting thing that is becoming an election issue, and I think the polling is really starting to show that people are worried about a massive variable renewable energy policy and what that means for our energy prices going forward. Bifurcation continues to be an issue. So people don't want Russian enriched uranium. In fact, it's been banned into the US. Whether or not the Russian enriched uranium and a problem for Kazakhstan is some of that uranium gets flowed through Russia, which can cause problems. People want Western friendly sources of supply, and that's Canada. Essentially, in Australia should be the main beneficiaries of that. There is a group called the Sapporo 5, which are putting in billions of dollars to help Western-friendly supply chains in the nuclear space. Australia's not yet a part of it, basically because we have a government that's ideologically opposed. So, there's a real opportunity for growth for Australia's participation in the nuclear fuel chain with a slightly different a slightly different approach from government. Plenty of uranium in Australia. We should be producing much more of it. Let's quickly get to the ban in WA. This is becoming an issue for WA because there is lithium jobs keep being lost. Nickel jobs are scarce these days, and even jobs in iron ore are now starting to come out of the system. So uranium can be that commodity which provides diversification of revenue to the state and diversification of jobs and redeployment for those that have lost their jobs. So increasingly important, vis-a-vis sort of 7 years ago when the ban was put in place, where you had mining full employment and you had iron ore at record levels, and therefore there was no real economic cost to that policy. Well, there's a real opportunity cost to it now. Now, I also want to run through this slide quickly. People need to understand that the uranium mining ban in WA is unpopular, and it was always unpopular. So you used to be able to mine uranium. Colin Barnett in 2008 put in place the regulation to allow uranium mining again in WA. And when he did that, the Nuclear Free Alliance, the Green Lobby Group, kicked up a fuss, and they started a public campaign and a petition in Parliament to reinstate this ban because it was horrible. And they scoured the state trying to get the population to care about it. Initially, they got 24 people to sign their petition to reinstate the ban. And eventually they end up getting 182, and that's what you can see here on the slide. So 182 people thought they were worried about uranium mining. Just to put that in comparison, the petition in that year that got the most attention at the state was actually a petition. People were worried that Colin Barnett was going to ban the sale of marijuana smoking implements in the state, and so they put in a petition to make sure that Colin didn't do that. That got 4,000 signatures, so about 20 times the level of concern in the community about marijuana than there was about the safety of uranium mining. Nevertheless, McGowan in 2017 did implement a ban, and he did that to appeal to the flagrant left and Greenie movement. Labor is really worried about the left of their party moving across to the Greens. They're worried about that federally. And in WA, McGowan quite cleverly did that, as well as ban offshore gas exports. And it had the desired effect. Actually, the Greens vote in WA collapsed, and they all went under the left of the Labor Party. So it was very much a political move appealing to one small subset of the community. It is still unpopular today. Makes it even more unpopular when we have AUKUS submarines. We have nuclear submarines. In fact, there's one sitting in WA at the minute undergoing maintenance. We have AUKUS continuing to be popular in WA. I think the best thing that the government could do is actually open up those nuclear submarines for public tours. There's a lot of public interest in them, and that will help with transparency and help people get comfortable with nuclear technology in the state. Uranium is already safely exported from South Australia. All these photos are here from South Australia, where yellow cake literally gets drummed, it gets put on public roads, and then it gets exported through the port of South Australia. No issues whatsoever, and this can easily happen in Western Australia. Going back to Yanrey and Cauldron, we have a massive exploration target that we're well on the way to achieving. We've delivered a scoping study, and look at this IRR, 79%. This is the beauty of ISR projects. No other conventionally mined assets can reach that. And we want to, this was the first pass, we want to make it bigger. And part of the things we will do in the off season is actually upgrade our scoping study. So there's a lot of reason to overturn the uranium ban now and make an election issue of it now. The state needs the diversification, and we also need, frankly, the moral high ground to say to the world that we're doing our part to help decarbonisation. The highest leveraged thing that West Australians can do to help global decarbonisation is export uranium. Much bigger return than building our own wind farms or solar farms. So, Jane, on that, I think I'll leave it there. Thank anyone, and anyone wants to reach out, I'm always available.
Absolutely. I think before I actually let you go then, so just what's next for Cauldron?
So I've announced we're doing a 25,000 metre campaign up at Yanrey drilling. It's getting really hot up there on site at the moment, so we'll keep going there as long as we can, maybe another 4 weeks till it just gets, frankly, too hot. And we'll come back and keep drilling next year. We've actually got heritage teams up on site now, clearing more lines to let us keep drilling more. So during the off season, so you can't drill again until March. Look, what we hope to do is we hope to declare a maiden resource at Manyingee. Actually, that'd be fantastic. We hope to upgrade the resource, existing resource at Bennet Well, and we hope to upgrade the scoping study on the back of an expanded resource base. So there's plenty of work to be done during the off season, and then we'll be back drilling sort of March, April next year, weather dependent.
Wonderful. And again, if you've got any questions for Jono, please reach out either directly. He's very vocal, as he mentioned, on X and LinkedIn. Otherwise, reach out via the contact details on the ASX announcements. But Jono, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Jane.